Let's start. Good evening, everyone. Selamat datang to the webinar on narrative and Mexican cinema. We are glad to have a large audience tonight to celebrate with us the Day of the Mexican Cinema, which is originally celebrated on August 15. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Lisette Aceves, and I am the Cultural Attaché of the Embassy of Mexico in Indonesia, and I will be the moderator of this event. First, I kindly request to everyone to mute your microphones, please. Thank you. And after that, I want to tell you how we are going to have this seminar. After the conference of Professor Mora, we will have around 15 minutes for question and answers. If during the conference you have a question, please write in the chat your name and that you want to make a question. So I will give the floor for questions on a first come, first served basis. And now, the ambassador of Mexico in Indonesia, Armando Alvarez, will give a welcome message. So please wait.
Selamat malam, teman-teman. It is a great pleasure to welcome you to this webinar on narrative and Mexican cinema, with the renowned Mexican director, Juan Mora Cattlet, author of several fantastic films and documentaries. First, I would like to convey my sincere appreciation to the National School of Film Arts of the National Autónoma University of Mexico and to the Jakarta Institute of Arts for their enthusiasm in co-hosting this webinar. Also, my special gratitude to all the participants present here tonight for your interest in this event. Professor Juan Mora Cattlet will address the challenging issue of composing, staging, and representing a Mexican drama in a film, a task to which Professor Mora has dedicated his work for many years, resulting in the production of his award-winning fiction films Return to Aztlán, about the myth of the Aztecs, and Heredera y Cucunari, about the legend of the conquest of Mexico in the 16th century. The webinar will reflect on narrative, stories, fiction, and myths in relation to the specificity of the cinematographic expression. I leave you in the good hands of Professor Juan Mora Cattlet. Terima kasih dan selamat menikmati pertunjukan.
Thank you very much. So now I will give the floor to Surjana Paramita, who is the Vice Dean for International Relations at the Faculty of Film and Television at the Jakarta Institute of the Arts.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lizette. Hello, good evening. My name is Paramita on behalf of Faculty of Film and Television, Jakarta Institute of the Arts. I would like to express my gratitude to Professor Mora. Welcome to Indonesia virtually. We are very pleased to have you here with us tonight. And I want to take this opportunity to thank Mexican Embassy and also National Autonomous University of Mexico, or UNAM, for this wonderful collaboration. We hope that we can create more program, masterclass, workshop, or even exchange students between Indonesian and Mexican film school. And please let me to give a short welcome speech to our participants in Indonesian language. Selamat datang, selamat malam, dan terima kasih banyak kepada Bapak, Ibu, Kakak, Adik yang sudah hadir tepat waktu pada malam hari ini. Saya mewakili Dekanat FFTV IKJ dan juga khususnya panitia masterclass yang merasa sangat terkesan atas antusiasme para peserta, karena dalam waktu kurang dari 24 jam kami terpaksa harus menutup pendaftaran, bahkan sudah melebihi dari kuota yang kami harapkan. Namun semoga ini juga menjadi pertanda bahwa meski di tengah pandemi yang belum usai, ternyata kita masih punya semangat dan energi yang begitu besar untuk membawa pulang pengetahuan, pengalaman, dan juga hal-hal inspiratif lainnya yang akan dibagikan oleh Profesor Mora pada malam hari ini. Well, I think that's all. I don't want to take too much of our time tonight. Hopefully we can have fun and full of learning for tonight masterclass. Thank you, Ms. Lizette. Excuse me, I think you can unmute your Zoom, Ms. Lizette.
Sorry. Okay, sorry guys. Well, again, please allow me to introduce Professor Juan Mora Cattlet. He's a Mexican film and documentary director. He teaches at the National School of Films Arts of the National Autonomous University of Mexico, as well as at the Cinematographic Training Center. Both are well-renowned films academies. In 2019, he was awarded by the International Association of Film and Television Schools with a Lifetime Educational Achievement. And in this occasion, Javier Rodriguez, who is assistant professor of Professor Mora, will also participate in this webinar, giving part of this conference. So thank you very much, and I give you now the opportunity to know more at this seminar with Professor Mora and with Professor Rodriguez. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, hello, good evening. In Mexico, it's good morning, so I think you don't get very tired with the exposition. I have arranged it in two parts. The first part, I will ask Javier to give a brief exposition on Mexican film, so you will know a little bit what the development of our film industry has been. And after that, I'll start talking about first narration and then its relationship with film, especially with my own work as a filmmaker in search of specifically Mexican film drama. So I will ask Javier to start with the overview of Mexican film, please.
Thank you. Hi, so yeah, good evening to everyone. I'm gonna share a PowerPoint so I can illustrate what I'm talking about. Okay, so a brief history of Mexican cinema. Cinema in Mexico arrived thank you to the workers of the Lumiere brothers, like many other countries in the world. And our president at that time was the dictator Porfirio Diaz. And Porfirio Diaz was a very big fan of French culture and also very big fan of innovations and machines. So the cinematographer was received with open arms here. President Diaz also became the first actor, technically, of Mexican cinema, because one of the very first few films that were filmed here was him riding a horse in one of our parks. But Mexico was in a very complicated moment for the creation of any industry. In 1910, with winds of change blowing in the country, the revolution happened, the Mexican Revolution. During this time, the main target of cinema in the country was propaganda for either side. And one of the generals of the Revolutionary Army became one of our biggest stars, General Pancho Villa. Villa understood the power of cinema and how it could be used to rally the people all over the country. He also was very charismatic, and he became so popular that Hollywood producer, Raoul Walsh, signed with him a contract of exclusivity for all his battles. An interesting fact, for example, is that Villa understood the power he could have. So if, for example, if a battle didn't happen right for a filmable way, for example, if he had a battle at night, the next morning he will ask his troops to recreate the battle so it could be filmed and it could be showed. Even though the revolution officially ended in 1917, it took 20 more years, give or take, of trouble and rebellion for the country to cool down and for the Mexican cinema industry to start growing. And growing it did. With the two biggest film industries in the world, the United States and Europe, getting ready or being already involved in the in World War II, Mexico had a particular opportunity. The material for movies in these countries were being redirected to the war effort, and so were the workers. A lot of new workers and equipment came from Mexico to Hollywood, and that made our industry grow with more money and more prepared workers. Also, while other Spanish-speaking countries like Spain or Argentina were focusing in making war films, Mexico could focus in making more commercially directed films, and that improved our industry even more. Three very important directors of that time are these three: Luis Buñuel, who was Spain-born but made a lot of movies in Mexico; Emilio El Indio Fernández, and Ismael Rodriguez, with their movies, this being an example of those three, becoming classics of Mexican cinema of the time. Also, we have a lot of actors becoming very, very popular in those times. These four, Maria Felix, Pedro Infante, Jorge Negrete, and Cantinflas, became really popular figures internationally, thanks to this golden era of the 30s, 40s, and kind of the 50s. But by the end of the 50s, the industry started to lose impulse. Many of the famous actors were either retired or dead, and Mexico started a very troublesome age in film. In 1963, thanks in part to the relevance of the French New Wave in the film clubs of the time, the National and Autonomous University of Mexico founded the CUEC, the University Center of Cinematic Studies, the first Latin American film school. That was the school of Maestro Mora, who now he gives classes there, and this is the school I'm graduating from. I put two pictures because one is the original campus and one is a new campus that opened, I think it was like 5 or 6 years ago. In 1965, the Mexican film industry was in an economic and creative crisis. Looking for a new way to revitalize and going back to the production numbers they had in the golden era, they thought of an answer, and they created the first contest of experimental cinema in Mexico. They were trying to make new perspectives mix with the old style of Mexican cinema, and the first prize winner, La Fórmula Secreta, or the secret formula, the subtitle Coca-Cola in the Blood, was a perfect example of this, but sadly it wasn't enough. With the presidency of Luis Echeverría Álvarez, who was our president from 1970 to 76, the Mexican state became the main producer, distributor, and exhibitor of film in the country. By the end of his term, the CCC, or the Center of Film Training, or Training for Cinematography, was also founded. And according to the Hollywood Reporter, it is now one of the best film schools in the world. Even though there were authors trying to make projects, and there were great movies from that time, the last 3 decades of the 20th century were marked by a big presence of B-series movies, with a lot of action, romantic comedies, and horror being made. The artistic directors of the time had to work in television or in this kind of films to make a living. Internationally, while the golden era popularized the idea of the Mexican charro, the Mexican mariachi, this era made the luchador very popular internationally, with El Santo, the silver mask, being the main Mexican star of the moment. He was the Mexican superhero of this time. The Mexican film industry kept in a creative crisis for a long time, the lowest point being 1997. There were only 7 films made that year, compared to the 150 that were made in average every year during the golden era. This was obviously terrible. The country was, again, in a very complicated time. We were in the middle of an economic crisis, a candidate for the presidency had been murdered, and the Zapatist Army of National Liberation had rose up in southern states of Mexico. But technically, kind of thanks to the production of the crisis production of '97, the Mexican Institute of Cinematography started to develop economic support of film projects. Starting the new millennium, also, Mexican cinema got a new breath of fresh air. Amores Perros from González Iñárritu and Tu Mamá También from Alfonso Cuarón showed to the Mexican audience and the Mexican filmmakers that a popular but artistic film was possible. Also, the policies for economic support started fully in 2002, helping a lot of projects to get money they needed to start production. From that point, Mexican cinema has been getting back to its feet. The last decade, the 2010s, were even better. Although the main focus of the industry was making romantic comedies with more of a commercial aim, Mexican cinema was being celebrated in international festivals, with a Mexican director winning Best Director in Cannes 2 years in a row, Carlos Reigadas with Post Tenebras Lux and Amat Escalante with Eli, respectively. In a more commercial market, Mexican filmmakers were also being celebrated. Of the 10 winners for Best Director at the Oscars, 5 of those were awarded to Mexicans. You know, the very famous Three Amigos, Alfonso Cuarón, who's from Cuec, Alejandro González Iñárritu, and Guillermo del Toro. 2 of them also won Best Picture. No? And also, another important Mexican who is making a lot of waves internationally is Emmanuel El Chivo Lubezki, who also made a lot of noise when he won the Oscar for Best Cinematography 3 years in a row, working with either González Iñárritu or Alfonso Cuarón in those projects. The most recent and important event that we can think of Mexican cinema in the world is the film Roma from Alfonso Cuarón, being the first Netflix movie to be nominated for Best Picture and winning Best Director and Best Cinematography, stating that the streaming services, this new way of film, can produce films with a recognizable artistic quality. Mexican cinema is looking up now. 2019, last year, we broke our own record of production with more of 200 films being made in the country. Of course, 2010 has been a complicated year with COVID-19, but we can only hope that we keep this track going and we have like better production the next years. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Javier, for such a condensed and informed presentation. So now we'll start with my part, which I named Narration and Filmmaking, which will have to do a little bit with the way I've learned to make films in my own projects. This whole idea started when I was a film student at the Prague Film School, that at a class I heard a professor say that Western drama had been born from the Greek myths, from the analysis and critique of Greek myths. And in my 19-year-old brain, I had this idea that Mexican film and Mexican drama should come from Mexican myths. So I made like a purpose, objective to make these kinds of movies. I'm going to show you now a trailer of the first film I made in that sense, which is called Return to Aztlan in Nahuatl, which is antique Mexican language in Necuepalistli in Aztlan, which dealt with the myths and the stories of pre-Columbian Mexico, the Aztecs of pre-Columbian Mexico. So it's a brief clip just to get into.
Au napa omotsaku nilhuicatl, au omotsaku intlali, au xenapa intonatiu otlan, momanas intlali, ignotlamatis, intonatio micis, shokistlewa.
Okay, so that's the first work I made on that subject. Well, I'm also a teacher since 1975 at the National Film School of Mexico, at what time the Center for Film Studies. And I tried to figure out what this relationship between film and narration became. So first of all, what is narration? Now, narration as a form of sharing human experiences seems to have been born even at the time when humans were not humans, at the time when we were either little rats living with dinosaurs or chimpanzees living in monkeys about 7 million years ago, before we descended from the trees and became human. There's a psychologist, a Jungian psychologist called Jordan Peterson, who has this idea that I like very much, how narration started. It seems that it was a necessity to communicate how to survive, yeah? Imagine this scenario. I'm going to tell a little story. We have a little rat. The little rat wants to eat something. She runs towards the food, and a dinosaur comes and eats the little rat. Another little rat saw that. So she says, well, if I run to get my food, I will be getting eaten by a dinosaur. What is this little rat doing? She's like predicting a future. She's imagining herself running to get that food and being eaten by a dinosaur. To do this, she's using imagination and anticipation, and she's creating in her mind a character, an avatar of herself that tries to do something and gets destroyed. So the little rat starts thinking several ways of doing that. So fiction is being born. In her mind, she's acting parts to obtain an objective, yeah? So she figures several, tries them, several little rats are killed, till one is able to obtain the food. Another little rat that saw that tries to find out how she did it. So the first rat, in a way, communicates her experience. That's the beginning of narration, yeah? Sharing an experience. This experience is repeated several times when we were already human, and sharing this experience made the story more complicated, because every person that heard the story tried it and then added some more information to this story till they got to a point when nobody knew who was doing the things that they were telling about. So they had to create a fictional character that would do these things. So fiction is born in that moment, yeah? From narration, from sharing individual experiences to a collective gathering of several experiences of several people, and creating a character that's able to do those things. So this process continues till the story becomes so sophisticated that it's impossible for a normal human being to perform it. So in that sense, what gets invented then is the hero, the superhuman who's able to do gigantic tasks, like Hercules washing the stables by moving a river from its course. So this way also the stories start to get together and they become myths. For example, the Assyria Babylon god Marduk, he had, I believe, around 59 names. Why? Because it was the 59 heroes from 59 nations that got together to create this state. So they mix all of their heroes into one, this superhero who then became a god. So we have this like development of narration from just sharing an experience to a myth that at one point becomes a religion. What do these narrations deal with? Usually with behavior, how to act in order for a human being to survive. So this information become rules for societies. And these rules for societies are embedded in those myths. That's the reason why when Greek philosophy is born from the analysis of myths, the idea of an ethic theme gets into their philosophy. On one side, we have like the cosmological aspect of Greek philosophy, and on the other side, we have the ethical. The cosmological comes from the observation of nature, and the ethical comes from the myths and from drama and from the creation of stories. So I'm going to use a PowerPoint in order to explain this development, because the first manner of communication is what Aristotle calls the mimesis, the imitation. He says the young child learns by imitating what the adults do, because he cannot understand language. He cannot understand another mean of communication. Let's say the little kid wants to show what a cat is like. So he starts like walking on 4 feet. He starts meowing, he starts purring, rubbing himself against the legs of others. And we realize that he's imitating a cat, but he's not imitating a cat completely. He's abstracting some elements from the cat's behavior and leaving aside another. So in that case, we're not seeing really an imitation of a real cat, but the concept of cat. So this little kid is abstracting from reality to expose or to transmit an experience, yeah? So let's start with this. The beginning. In a cave, one of our ancestors places his hand on a wall and traces it with some dark pigment. Why did he do this? Let's let our imagination fly a little bit and picture this man doing this. He's leaving a mark. Yeah, he's saying, I was here. This is like a signature, individual signature. When his family grows, when this man becomes an ancestor, other human beings do the same thing. They start printing their hands on the wall. Yeah. As you can see, some hands are superimposed over other hands, and they're hands of many, many individuals. What is this? I like to think of it like a record of time. Yeah. Several generations are placing their signatures on the wall to show that this is where they grew from the first ancestor to the present times. Yeah. So we're seeing here not only like a nice mural painting, but we're seeing history. Yeah. We're seeing an image of time, time being frozen on the wall of a cave. Yeah. Time passes, the hands start to fade, and suddenly another thing is depicted on those walls. The hunting prey and the hands on the prey. Yeah. Why this? Because it was important for them. They wanted to be able to survive not only by recollecting fruits or plants, but also by eating meat and hunting it. So the experience of hunt was shown in images. So the second way of transmitting information, first is by mimicry, is by imitation. The next one is by images. Yeah. Images contain less information than the imitation because they're flat, because they are just lines. We don't see like the bulk of the animal. We don't see its size. We don't hear its noise. We don't feel its odor. We just see like this depiction of the important elements, yeah, the abstraction of the animal, the relationship of the animal with the person. Yeah, the hands and the animal, the hands of the hunter and the prey. Sorry, got the. Okay, here it is. Yeah. And then we have a story. Yeah. What do we see in this image? Again, a depiction of time, a depiction of events that follow each other. Yeah. First of all, we have here 3 moons. Yeah. We could believe they're moons. I don't know really, but let's assume they're moons, which would mean like 3 nights. Hunters. See how the hunters are depicted, just little lines, yeah? Complete abstractions of human beings, yeah? They have this poles in their hands, which we assume that they are weapons. And here we have this like little pigs, yeah? And then we have the competitor, the other predator, the tiger tooth, the saber-toothed tiger, yeah? Which is depicted in color with many more elements in human beings. So it was important to recognize this. I don't know exactly what this figure down here is. Maybe it's an offspring, I don't know, yeah? Maybe it's a prey, I don't know. Well, after they hunt, the family gets together. We have like maybe children, women, adults, what are they doing? They're cooking, yeah? Cooking and eating the little beasts. What do we have here? Beginning of a narration that shows a process, very much like a film does, yeah? What happened afterwards? Framing. I had selected these two images because I believe they're very interesting from several points of view. One is that we have this mixture of human and beast, yeah? We have these satyrs and the manads dancing with them. And this half men, half beasts are like enjoying themselves, but they're placed not on a wall of a cave that doesn't have boundaries, but suddenly boundaries exist. So we see the frame, which is composed of several interesting elements. Yeah, on one side we have like this little lines. Yeah, then we have plants, nature, and underneath we have something very interesting. We have this little element. Sorry about that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Okay, here I'm back. We have this like 6 squares in a big square that that appear in many cultures. They're like images of the world because we have the center and we have the 4 cardinal points, yeah, north, south, east, and west, or the 4 roads of the universe. And then we have the image of the labyrinth, yeah, the way one must follow in order to attain enlightenment, to attain knowledge, the road of life, yeah. So we have like this combination of cosmos and the process of life, yeah. But that's our interpretation. I'm not an expert in antique art, but I think that makes sense. Then we have this image. We have again like the labyrinth. This is an image of Theseus and the Minotaur, where the human beast separates itself into 2 elements. One element is a rational human being, and the other element is our animal part, our irrational part, our mostly emotional part. And here we have like 2 concepts that are very interesting to understand. That is the relationship between rationality and irrationality, between order and chaos. There's an interesting observation by Nietzsche in his Origin of the Tragedy. He says that before the Socratic times, tragedy would deal with trying to understand the chaos in which we live, try to create this illusion that we have some kind of order. But after, it was like medicine against fear of the unknown. But after Socrates, things changed. Rationality became like the lord of everything. And at that point, the idea of chaos disappeared. There was only rationality which existed. Let's go a little bit further to Middle Ages. Middle Ages, the image becomes order. You know, we have like those 2 elements. On one side, the order. Here we see the city of God with the souls of people who behave according to religion, according to the hierarchy in which God was placed at the summit with his angels. Then like the pious people, also the nobility, and the normal people. And here we see like a separation with the other side, chaos, yeah? Here we see the destruction of, let's say, the city of the devil, yeah? People being thrown into hell. There are 2 possibilities, 2 ethical possibilities to live life. One in order, one in chaos. Why did I put a brain here and the yin and yang on the other side? Because I believe that these images, in a way, represent the same thing. As you know, our brain is divided into 2 hemispheres. One hemisphere is known as a hemisphere that belongs to our logical and linguistic appreciation of the world. It's a hemisphere that deals mostly with the future and the past. Is where we store all of our little mechanisms, automatic mechanisms that enable us to talk, to walk, to remember. There's our libraries in there, all the codification. And according to physiologists, this works, if you know computers, like serial information. Information is processed element by element. The other side, the right side, is like the non-logical hemisphere, the hemisphere where all the information comes. It lives in the present, but the information here is not organized. There's a lot of elements that have to be put together before we can comprehend them. So in that way, the right and left hemisphere are communicating between them. Yeah. So we could say that we have a right hemisphere that deals with chaos and a right hemisphere that deals with order. The same in the yin and the yang. We have like the dark part, the part that we do not see, where there is no specific order, where there's non-organized information. And we have the left part, white light, where we can see things and organize things. Okay, let's go to the Renaissance. In the Renaissance, we see this relationship between the model and nature and the artist, the abstraction. What is the artist doing? He builds this sort of grid through which he can like draw the pointings on a similar grid on his table, creating an abstraction of the form, a mathematical abstraction. Yeah. In this image by Dürer, it's very interesting because on the side of the artist, we see rationality. Yeah. We see the pot with a plant in it. We see the artist working mathematically. And on the other side, we see nature. Yeah. Through the window, we see just the mountains, the plants, and we see the woman. Yeah. A voluptuous woman filled with passion. Yeah. Rationality, irrationality. We could say that, or we could say order, we could say chaos. Yeah. And this grid, the artist, the left side of her brain is trying to impose order in that chaos. But he's also leaving a lot of things aside. Yeah. Where is all the emotion? Where is all this living, organic elements? They're left behind. Yeah. It's again the abstraction. This goes to this point. Well, when the image becomes more looking for the cosmic order reduced to human proportions. Yeah, we see this famous painting of the Arnolfi marriage, which is completely composed according to this Renaissance, according to mathematical and geometrical principles. We see like the fugue points, several of them. We see the symbols. Yeah, every element depicted in the painting symbolizes something else. Yeah, symbolizes ethical and moral principles. Yeah, and we see the mirror in the center, where the other point of view of the image is shown. Yeah, I believe this could be like precursor of cubism. Yeah, where we see the same object from several points of view. Here we see it from the front, and here we see it from the back. what happens afterwards? What happens at the appearance of romanticism, of German idealism, of the rejection of the rationality of modernism, the disappearance, the abstraction, the way to abstraction in the image, yeah? From an image that is very analogic to its model, like this first painting by Monet, slowly the image disappears. Yeah? The representation of the outside world is substituted by a representation of how do I perceive that world, of my psyche. It could be like Kant's second Copernican revolution that turned not the observation of the external object, but the way we observe it, from objective to subjective, yeah? And then to the point of abstraction, where the important thing is not the depiction of external objects, but the pictorial material by itself, color, line, form. And then we get to this, yeah? Inner world, geometrical but illogical construction, and the black canvas. Again, what is this? Image of chaos, non-image. Is this the end of the image? We don't know. Okay, to make things a little bit more lively, I'm going to show you another clip from my second film. This one deals with the conquest of Mexico by the Spaniards in the 16th centuries. It's called Erendira Ikikunari. Ikikunari means the one that's not vanquished. So let me... Okay, ready?
Tradet autem frater fratrem in mortem, et pater filium, et consurgem filii parentes, et morte afficen eos.
Okay, that was like my second film. Well, myth. As I was remarking, myth contains information, the information gathered by the species in order to survive. This means that the analysis of the study of the myths can give us, and that's why I believe that film is so important, because it gives us information how to solve problems, how to solve the difficulties we encounter in our lives, yeah? And also, so I became like interested in how myths work. And of course, I had to go into the works of Joseph Campbell and a mythologist who does comparative mythology, and his teacher, Carl Gustav Jung, who was the one who initiated this observation that myths around the world have all similarities. Remember talking about the little rats and the dinosaurs, or the chimpanzees living in trees with serpents. As an example, we have the serpent, which is an element that appears in all human myths from all the cultures. Okay. Here we have a Chinese dragon and Mexican Quetzalcoatl. Yeah. The Chinese dragon, I believe you know more about it than I do. It's a positive serpent, a serpent that's helpful, a serpent that brings luck. In this Mexican image, we see the serpent devouring a human being. But it's not just a normal serpent. It's a serpent covered with feathers. The symbolism of these feathers mean that it is a serpent that has knowledge. Yeah, it's the creator god of the pre-Columbians, Aztecs, or Mayas, which was a bringer of culture. Yeah, it's called Quetzalcoatl in Nahuatl. It's called Kukulkan in Maya. Yeah, the plum serpent. But why is the plum serpent that brings culture devouring a human being? Here we have three representations of that serpent in relation with heroes. Yeah. On the left side, we have Quetzalcoatl, the guy I was talking to you about, that holds the serpent in his hand. Yeah. The serpent, which is also a rod of lightning. This is the bringer of culture. On the left side, we have Marduk, the Babylonian hero, Babylonian god, with his version of the serpent, the dragon Mushushu. He has dominated this serpent, this dragon. It serves him. And in the center, we have, again, St. George killing the dragon. Yeah, three myths, three religious figures from three different cultures that did not really have any contact among them. In all of them, we see this relationship between human being and the serpent. Why is this so important? Again, this time the hero, the human being, is represented by an eagle. Yeah, an eagle which is related to the sun, which is related to the bright part, which is related to knowledge, which is related to culture, which is related to reason, eating the serpent. Yeah, in the middle we have like the most revealing of all of these images. The serpent from the that appears in Assyrio-Babylonian legends, that appears also in the Torah, that appears also in the Bible, yeah? The serpent that gives knowledge to human beings. Yeah, if we believe this idea of us or our ancestors living with serpents on the trees, that serpents would come and eat them, what that did was it forced human beings to develop knowledge. Knowledge of what? What does Eve learn when she eats an apple from the tree that the serpent induced her to do? First of all, she learns she's fragile. Yeah, well, we human beings are fragile. We need to wear clothes. The second thing that we learn is we're going to die. Mortality, which is also the discovery of time. Time is that we have to live before we die. And in order to survive, we have to work. So in that sense, the serpent gives human beings knowledge. And this information is contained in the myths. So that could be an explanation why the serpent is so important as a giver of knowledge, and a serpent that must be in a way controlled, must be in a way integrated into our culture. Here we have another image of similarities among cultures. Yeah, we have like the god of the sun of the Aztecs, Tonatiuh. Notice his tongue is exactly like the tongue of Kali. Yeah, cultures that didn't have any point of relationship. And we have the image of Kali, in a certain way, a goddess that is creative and destructive. Yeah, like one of Jung's disciples said, the great mother that gives origin to everything, but also destroys everything. And it's equivalent in pre-Columbian religion, the goddess Coatlicue. We see in both of them these skulls. Yeah, here we have hands. We have the hands here. We have the predator claws. Yeah, similar. And we have a severe head from which two serpents come out and create like the head. Yeah, we have here parallelism among myths. What does this mean? It might mean that has to do something with the way we think, with the way we process information. Yeah, as I was explaining before, we have these two hemispheres in the brain, the logical and the sensitive, that are also present in the concept of yin and yang. And we have this little part of our brain called the hypothalamus, which is considered to be like the oldest part of our brain. They call it the reptilian brain. According to Jordan Peterson, this reptilian brain has two parts. One part contains the emotive motivational mechanisms that throws us into action, which are, from one side, the need to protect ourselves, and on the other side, the need to perpetuate our species. And the other half has the exploration mechanism, which is the mechanism that allows us to do actions in order to protect ourselves and to continue our species. To do this, we have to go out into the world. So how do we interpret the world with this mechanism, this exploration mechanism? We divide it in three elements. The first element is the objective. What do we want to attain? What do we need? Do we need food? Do we need shelter? Do we need companionship? The second element that we identified in the outside world is the obstacle. What doesn't allow to get what we need? Yeah. So we have to overcome that obstacle, so we need some resources. So that's like the third element that we find outside, resources. Elements to defeat the obstacle and attain the objective. To do this, we develop a line of action. You see, I have used these three words. Yeah, I have used objective, I have used obstacle, and I have used the word line of action. If you recognize the dramatic form is not accidental. Our brain is constructed in order to obtain things so we can survive. And to do this, we act that way. So as you see, what we call the dramatic form is embedded, is inherent to us as humans, and not only to humans, but to all living things. Yeah. Here I have like this diagram that shows a little bit left and right brain functions and the yin and yang, and you can see like the parallelisms, yeah, for the left brain functions, analytic thought, logic, language, science, and math, rationality, objectivity, reality, base, skydives with parachute. That's funny. And the right brain functions, thought, intuition, creativity, art, music, risk-taking, impetuous, fantasy, base, pompous, windbagginess. Okay, how do those two hemispheres communicate? The left one gathers all the information from the senses. At the same time, it's more like a parallel system of communication with the outside. And the left organizes them according to the pre-established patterns that it has learned or inherited. To do this, we need to like slow down the functions of the left brain hemisphere. And this happens during the night when we sleep. That's the reason our dreams are not very logical, because we're trying to absorb the new information, give it some form that our left brain hemisphere will be able to comprehend. The other method we have to acquire or organize this new information is through art. You know, art is always like in the boundary between that we know and comprehend and that we do not know and do not understand, being the boundary between order and chaos. Okay, so to make things easier, I'm going to share with you again one video of my third film. My third film is called Wrath or Hell or Sheol, which is the Hebrew word for one of the parts of hell. This film I made because I'm a cancer survivor. I got lymphoma about more than 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And it was supposed to be like a terminal illness. I had gotten to the point where I just had to arrange things in my life before I departed. But then I started studying, looking for ways that if conventional medicine could not help me by itself, maybe alternative methods could be helpful. The result of combination of this holistic medicine with the conventional medicine helped me to get through this illness. So at that point, when I survived, I had a friend that was always telling me to go and talk with people who had who were suffering similar problems, to talk to them and tell me what I had done. That I would do, some of them would survive, some of them wouldn't. I think it's like a very personal decision in many cases. But then I decided to make a film about it because it's a film I would have liked to see when I was ill, because most of the films I saw about this theme of cancer were, well, films that told you, you're gonna die, better arrange your things. There were some very absurd ones like the the boy that was dying of cancer was an angel sent by the Lord to teach and things like that. No? I don't want to see those kind of depressing films. I want to see a positive film about this situation. So what I did was, first I looked around for more people that were conscious of violence, and I did interviews with them, and I found that we had all very similar experiences in the way we, in certain way, helped to cure ourselves with the conventional medicine. And then I thought, well, this film can be very hard, and also it also shows one part of the problem. The other part is what happens inside one of us. Yeah, it's a part that can only be depicted through fictional elements. So I decided to mix fiction and documentary in making this film. So I'm going to show you the trailer, and then we'll continue.
Soy sobreviviente de un cáncer en etapa terminal desde ya hace 17 años.
Tú tienes un nahual que mata gente.
¿Un nahual?
No recuerdo haber registrado en papel los efectos secundarios de mis quimioterapias. Es un maldito infierno. No hay sueños profundos.
¡No lo sé porque lo soñé!
Entonces empecé como a vivir en un túnel.
Ese sentimiento de que usted tuvo una profecía es un engaño de la memoria.
¿Cómo ves? Escondía sus tranquilizantes.
También hay unas enormes posibilidades de superarlo.
No le he pasado mal, porque nunca me he sentido enferma.
Okay. So, making films. Okay, I'm back. So, making films, making a drama based on our myths. Like Greek drama came out from the Greek myth, so Mexican drama should come out from Mexican myths. So when I came back to Mexico from my studies in Prague and Czechoslovakia, I started with this project to create a film based on Mexican mythology. So I took Mexican mythology, applied my knowledge again at the European school, and came out with something like, look, a bad Greek drama. So no, this cannot be. I have to understand not only the story as being interpreted by Europeans, but how they interpreted it themselves. So I went to several friends who were archaeologists or historians, and they sort of taught me how to understand these myths. Yeah. So I have here like a little story of Mexico that starts with drawings made in pre-Columbian style. It's called a codex. It's called the Codex Borbonicus, which is from the time of the conquest, but it's done in the style and narrations, in the style of narration by images developed by the pre-Columbian Aztecs. And it shows more or less the development, our origin, yeah? So let's try it. Okay. The first time that interested me is the origin of Mexican culture. As I live in Mexico City, well, Mexico is composed by more than 59 or 60 original cultures, different ethnics, of which the most known may be the Aztecs and the Mayas. Well, this is like the Aztecs version of their history. According to them, they came from a place called Aztlan. Aztlan is like the original land. Let's call it like the Garden of Eden of the Aztecs. There, their god Huitzilopochtli promised them a golden land, a land where they could live and prosper. So they took their little boat, they crossed the lake, and started their journey. So they departed from their place of birth, looking for the promised land that was what their God had promised. Okay. So they had this priest who were carrying this little baggage, which contained the bones of their God. So here we can see that that God was really an ancestor that had been deified because of its knowledge. Yeah. So we remember the origin of narration from experience to the hero. We can a little bit understand what's going on. No, their God shows them the way. What we have on top of the human figures are their names. Yeah. This one is named Serpent. This one is like a bird with a serpent. This is like a headdress. This is like a shield. Yeah. And these little footprints are telling us that they are walking. Yeah. That they're on this pilgrimage. Along the way, they had several omens. Here you see a tree breaks. They build a temple for their god. They stay, find food, yeah. And here there's one missing. There's 7 houses, which means that there's 7 tribes or the 7 groups of the Aztecs that were following this trail. Here they sit around their god who tells them which way to go. Yeah. They go through several places. You know, this is the symbol for a hill, the hill of sadness, the hill of the serpent, place of dwelling in their long journey. These are depictions of the years. How many years did they last? Yeah, you can see how the years are connected by these lines. Yeah. You can see how the years have symbols that reappear. This is a house, a rabbit, cane, like a cane, a stone knife, again a house, again a rabbit, around, again a cane, again a stone house, and you have the numbers. Yeah. So this is the year 2 house, this is the year 3 rabbit, this is the year 4 cane, and so on. So we can see how many years their pilgrimage took them. Yeah. Here's a special sign. This is a sign of lighting a fire, which meant that every 52 years they believed that the century had ended, which it was not a century, because century has to do with the word cent, 100. Yeah. This was like a 50 something. Yeah. Which meant a new age had begun. Yeah. So they kept on walking, filled with hardships and wars and encounter with other tribes. Here this means they went to war and they have prisoners. See how they're holding their hair. And they're presenting them to a lord. The lord is because he's seated on this chair. And this is his name. No, his name is Speaking Eagle. Yeah. And this happened by the heel, the crooked heel. No? In Mexico, we have a name, a Nahuatl name for the crooked heel, which is represented here. Until they found the sign of the promised land. Shouldn't be surprising, yeah? Which is the sign of the promised land? The eagle with the serpent atop of a cactus in the middle of a lake. Yeah. Let's remember the image of paradise. Let's remember the image of rationality and chaos. Yeah. So they found the place where chaos and rationality met, and there they built their city. Fantastic. This is what the Spaniards saw when they came to Mexico. A city built upon the waters. Yeah. Order amidst chaos. How did they do it? From the original small island where they found their sign, which is in the center, they start cutting logs, tying them up, filling them up with earth and mud, and planting on them. So it became like a floating city. Yeah? They were gaining or creating earth where there was no earth, creating a territory where there was no territory. It was this sort of exploration. This was turning chaos into order. So they created this beautiful city, which was, well, destroyed by the conquerors, so they would build upon it their old colonial city. This is a map made at the time where you can see like the three parts of the city. You see like the ceremonial center, which was like the order or place where everything was very well fixed. It was surrounded by the markets, which were the places of trade, and that was surrounded by the different order places where the different artisans live, fishermen, jewelry makers, pottery makers. And on the very, very edge, that's where the peasants live. Those that were building really the territory, those that were transforming the lake into land. It's an image of their ceremonial center, supposedly the way that the Spaniards found it, with the pyramids, with the gods, yeah, and the let's say the governmental offices, where the religious, the political, the military, and the school for the elite were placed. Our ancestors buried under the city. Spaniards destroyed them to build on top of them their own churches and their own houses. There's an image of the big temple near the center of the city, which is up here. There's the main square. This is like the cathedral built by the Spaniards near the city, and this is what was the house of the conquerors, which is now our presidential palace. You can see it here from further away. Yeah, there it is. The old temple, the cathedral, presidential palace, and Mexico City. The lake is practically gone. Everything is territory now. Yeah. The great city of Mexico, Tenochtitlan, became Mexico City amidst the lake. Okay, I have followed the way they told the story. I completed their story with what happened after the conquest. So then I learned that in order to make a film based on this mythology, I should not only take the story that was told, but also the way they told the story. Try to base my film on the way they structure the story, which is a circular way. So learning about their storytelling, about their myths, about the structure of their myths, about their significance, overall their ethical significance, I had to go first into the sources. Those sources were basically, I'll show them to you. Images. We're seeing images tell us less than imitation, but tell us much more than words. They say an image is worth more than 1,000 words. Stanley Kubrick says something very similar. He says, when we see an accident, when we see what's happening, we feel very moved. We try to help the person that's been in this accident, who's being the victim, But when we read about it in a newspaper, it might even not interest us at all, There's something of the power of sight that make us want to participate in a more fully way, So that was one of my first points of departure, the images. Here we see beautiful Maya mural painting from the city of Bonampak in Yucatan, depicting lords, depicting warriors, depicting slaves. As I live in Mexico City, I wanted to start from the Aztec codices. We have two kinds of images. One of a god, are the most important god of the Aztecs, Huitzilopochtli, that was the one that guided them from Aztlan to today's Mexico. And then we have another codex that's called the Mendoza Codex, which shows the way they gather tribute. So here we can find costumes, we can find utensils, we can find a lot of elements of their culture. So one of my point of departure were these Aztec codices. We can see here that the tradition of this pre-Columbian art was not lost by the conquest, but rather adapted to the times. On the upper part, we see a pre-Columbian mystic codex, and the right hand, a colonial painting, mural painting, depicting their image of horses. See, the horse is like a monster, but it's a monster that's in a way made indigenous. See, he has a headdress with feathers, terrible face, and you cannot see it very clearly here, but he has a human hand holding a prisoner, and his feet wear sandals. Here we have a warrior. So you see, there's a mixture. There's like the soul of between pre-Columbian images and contemporary images. So here there was only one step to go further, to go from this into filmmaking. My point of departure was one, let's say, verbal information that was gathered by the monks. Here we have a book called The History of the Indies of New Spain and the Isles of Firm Land by Father Fray Diego Duran. Spaniard monk that learned the Nahuatl, that was the Aztec language, and gather information from them about their story, their customs, their mythology, everything. You know, we have here an image, a drawing from that book, where we see an Aztec lord talking to his advisors. On the other side was the Natal Codex, Codex Nutal, which is not Aztec, it's mystic, but it shows a story. See, here you can see, you can read the codex going from right to left, following the images placed among the lines. From the book of Diego Duran, I got two stories. One was of the great drought that lasted 4 years and that the Aztecs suffered. And on the other side was the story of how Lord Moctezuma I sends his magicians and priests back to the original land, to Aztlan, to get a message from the goddess. It would be something as if a president would send the priests back to the Garden of Eden to ask God for his advice. Yeah. Today it sounds a little absurd, but at that time, myth, history, storytelling, everything was mixed. There was not much difference between what we now call fictional world and real world. No, both were intermingled. So I had like the anecdote for the story. It was going to be the travel of on one part, the priest going back to Aztlan to get the message from the goddess, and on the other side was a poor peasant that does the same trip. The idea of the poor peasant came from the image that gave me or suggested me the structure, the storytelling structure. According to the cosmological myth, well, there are three kinds of myths, you know, the cosmological myths, the exploration myths that have to do with the search of something. They always include a hero that goes, defeats an obstacle to attain objective, and in this objective is always contained a love story. Yeah, why a love story? Because finding the objective and like the treasure, and finding the woman with which the hero is going to create a whole clan fulfills both of the necessities that are basically in our hypothalamus, yeah? The preservation and the protection, yeah? So, and the third kind of myth is like the rebirth myth, the myth where something, in order for something to be born, something must die. That gives us a cyclical structure. So here in the face of the Aztec sun stone, also known as the Aztec calendar, we see the face of the actual sun. According to the Aztecs and to the Nahuas, this is the fifth age. Before us, 4 ages existed, each of one with one sun that was destroyed by the next one in order to start a new age. So we have 4 suns: the sun of wind, the tiger sun, the water sun, and the fire sun. Each of these was destroyed, yeah? The first by great winds, and the humans of that time would turn into monkeys. The tiger sun, where the tiger devoured all the human beings. The water sun is like a deluge, where all the humanity was killed by rain that fell from the sky. And the fire sun, well, people turn into fishes, and the fires, and there was a fire rain, and people became into birds. The fifth son was originated by the poorest of the gods, who jumped into the original fire to become the sun, and in order to move, he killed all of the other gods. Yeah, so the gods sacrificed themselves in order that we human beings could survive. And this fifth son, according to legend, is going to be destroyed by earthquakes. So what I found here was this circular narration, yeah? And I thought that I would have to build my film with that circular structure. I would use the story of the sons as a prologue and epilogue to the film, and the search of the priest and the poor peasant of the land of the original land of find the mother goddess would have to go through stages, like the four sons, till on the fifth son the hero is killed and becomes the fifth age. To make it practical, I departed from using the ruins and the codex. You see the depiction of the ruins of the buildings in this already colonial image down at the right, where we see the two pyramids, because usually the gods were dual gods, a duality, yeah? But the Spaniards added the devils, see a little devil here, a little devil there, to say that the pre-Columbians were worshipping devils, yeah? This is an actual ruin where I put my actors dressed up according to the images found in the codices. Here we have inspiration, yeah? There is a figure in the codice of what we call it, a ocelot warrior, a tiger warrior. Here is my tiger warrior wearing the tiger skin and was using body makeup, which a certain Australian filmmaker stole for his film Apocalypto, but that's not interesting, yeah? Here is like the makeup from the codices reconstructed and actors, yeah. These were like tests. See how transform them. Here is this same makeup, which were ritual, like transforming the body into a canvas filled up with these signs. So when somebody would appear, a warrior or a priest or a politician, their body would be covered with all of the signs. It was like a communication, yeah? It was like a book. You would fill your body with symbols, yeah? Here we are in the process of doing the body painting. See, here we have like the blue with the beard, yeah? We have to develop a special makeup material made out of earth, like clay, to avoid it looking like a mime, like European mime. You can see the texture here of the clay in this makeup trials. The scenography we use, of course, the original ruins. Here I put a red drape in order to enliven it. This is the inside of one of the pyramids. It is like for the eagle and tiger warriors. So you see the two eagles here, the tiger. I added these elements, the blue elements. Here is like the throne, the Lord Moctezuma, yeah. And here is the way we reconstructed the city. That was before digital compositing times, yeah. we're using something like glass shots. It's the construction of the characters. One of the problems, how do we depict the goddess? The goddess Coatlicue, remember the one with the two serpent heads, yeah? The mother goddess of the Aztecs, the earth that is at the same time creator and destructor. For that, I combined two facial makeups. The face makeup of death on the right side, chaos, yeah, and this makeup of stone, yeah, which would imply order. So here I have the two sides of the brain, here I have the yin and yang, here I have order and chaos, and the same character. Yeah. The other characters were depicted. Here is one nobleman, a savant, and here is the peasant, here is a merchant. So they went to Aztlán to look for a message from the goddess. And that's how I made my film, Return to Aztlán, Inequipalistli in Aztlán. I'm going to show you now the message that the goddess sent to the Aztec lords.
Papaki pampa na meshita, no pilwane, niswiwane, sigmatikan, insatepan nikan onasik, innopilsin, inamoteo huitzilopostli. Ni choca, ni tlaocoya, ni chía. Cao nechilwi, nonansin, amosenca ni huescaguas. Ompan ni quinyacanas, ininemoaya, ni naltepeu, inompan quimasehuasque, cainic peguas. Innomatica au innomeutica. Caniquita no pilguané, no conen cual nemi oncan huecawak, au nechilcauqui ni tlalcoyani. Au amo neshita notlok ewa. Yeica, namesnahuatia anquilhuisque inamotencopa. Calleo imantic ipan, ca injuo quimica linnepapantlaka, au ikempanawi inimitica. Injuki tlatepanalistli no quimpeu, injuquinquilisque, quimpeguasque, impinotlaca, au quimayahuilisque, in itlalpan. Tlalchihuetzisque yewat, au in imiwan, au inicnechin namiki, iniquitasnequi, xigmacaca ninismastlac, ininmoquentis iniquac mocuepas initicopa.
So, there you have it. From narration to film, from myths, pre-Columbian myths, to the most contemporary form, filmmaking. The way we share stories today, not through verbal, which is very abstract and precise, but which lacks a lot of information, to images and sounds, which gather a lot of information, not only for our understanding, but also to our feelings. So we have still some time left, so I would end my presentation here. and would ask you to, if you have any questions, to post them, and I'll try my best to answer them. So, no questions?
Me? Can I?
Yes, of course. What's your name?
All right. Oh, my name is Karen. Should I turn on my camera or no?
Whatever you want to do.
Okay, all right. So, okay, I will.
Nice photo.
All right. Okay, my name is Karen. I'm a student in Jakarta Institute of the Arts. So, it's really interesting. But what I want to ask is, like, you take the reference from the picture and from the paint. Is there the things that you haven't seen in the paint or in the picture that you create on your own? How you recreate that?
Well, the film is not a historical reconstruction. That's impossible to do because a lot of these buildings were destroyed. A lot of these codices were burnt. The ones that were saved were taken as curiosities to Europe, and one of them was used, I don't know, burned by the children of some lords, etc. So it's a point of departure, yeah? Yes, I take all of these elements and mix them together into a contemporary film. A film is not made for historians, it's not made for experts, it's made for the general public. I had a very beautiful experience with this film because Carl Jung talks about the collective unconscious, which is something I try to show when the parallelism between the different mythological elements in different cultures, you know, like the serpent and all of this, in all of these traditions. So I took the film to Austria, and it was shown in a small town called Klagenfurt, and in the main place, the central of the city, there's a sculpture of Hercules killing a dragon. So, well, I'm in a mythical place, and when the film finished, the people would not speak. They wouldn't leave, but they wouldn't ask any questions. At last, one of them stood up and said, "How do you expect us to make questions when you had just put us through a ceremonial event? Even if this was Mexican myth, they, in their unconscious, they lived it. They identified with the myth." And I said, well, this is great. This is like a proof of the collective unconscious and something like that. So I think it's the way you do it, you try to connect your knowledge with your not so rational part. Okay. Here are some questions. The Hollywood classical structure is prevalent worldwide, including in the nation's cinema. The mainstream Mexican film explore different forms of narratives based on indigenous cultures. Well, now they're doing it, yeah? There's a couple of people, there's one friend of mine who works with children and goes all over the world making short films with the children based on their myths. Up to this point, I know he has done it a lot in Mexico. He went to the Easter Islands, you know, where the Moais and this giant sculptures are, and he worked with the children there. There's one of them. There's another ex-student of mine, Federico Cecchetti, who went and make a film with Tarahumara, I think. Well, he went with one of the indigenous groups called the Maracame, which is like a witch doctor, you know, placed in contemporary times. There's several trials doing this, no? Another question, the years you have worked in developing Mexican drama based on Mexican myths, what have you found the most distinctive characteristic in separating drama and all other Mexican drama and all kinds of drama? Well, I wouldn't think there's a Mexican drama built specifically with that complexity. Our culture is a mixed culture. We have a lot of European influence since the colony, But as it happened with the Roman Empire, that the Romans went all around Europe, kidnapping the gods and taking them to the pantheon, yeah, and incorporating them into their religion. So each local god would become part of the Roman pantheon. When the Catholicism became the official religion of the Roman Empire, they did this exactly the same thing. They incorporated the gods of the cultures they were conquering, identifying them with Christian saints. So here in Mexico, we have a lot of saints that have this dual character. On one side, there's the pre-Columbian god, Tlaloc, and on the other side is the Señor de Chalma, yeah? And people go to ask this saint favors, doing it in the pre-Columbian way. They go and dance, because pre-Columbian drama was a lot on dancing. You would dance to ask the gods. So the Spaniards, priests have to build spaces in front of the churches, so the Mexicans would come and could dance to their gods disguised as the European dances. So I think it's the same thing with Mexican drama. Yeah, we have like this very original, ancestral thing in it, and we try to adapt it to the European form. And we're not always very successful at doing that. So it's like a badly made mixture, but we're on the way of doing it, yeah? Okay. Huicholes, yeah, Maracame were huicholes. Thank you, Javier. Yes, and any other questions? Do you find this interesting?
Absolutely, it has been really enlightening for all of us.
Well, I try to put, as is the Day of Mexican Film, well, I try to put a lot of Mexico in it. And besides giving my opinions about filmmaking, also telling you a little bit about our country, our culture, and I believe that we might have many, many similarities, yeah?
If you want, Riri, you can tell your comment and question. It's okay.
Oh, there's a question here. How do you think this kind of cinema, which is alternative, can grow? How did you find your cinema? How did I find my cinema? Well, at that time, as Javier pointed out, there was a government financing through the Mexican Film Institute, and also they developed a law in which companies, instead of paying taxes, could finance films. So, because unfortunately, I think it happens all over the world, we make a lot of films, but they don't get shown in our nation because of the monopoly on exhibition by mainly the American companies, the so-called mainstream cinema. But there's also alternative ways of showing, and I hope today with the internet that will become more feasible. So the finance is done that way. And I see you put alternative between alternative. Yeah, I don't believe it's alternative. I think that we call them US monopoly on distribution must not choke our national expressions, because every country has something of their own that they can share and integrate into world culture. So I think today that the means to make films have become more accessible. You know, you can shoot films with this, yeah? And you can edit them very easily on your computer. It also depends on the scope you want to attain. Well, it's like when writing started to spread, yeah? Everybody could write, but also not everybody could write great stories. Yeah? So it's a thing of finding a theme you are really interested that you're passionate about, and go on and create your own movies. You will find, if you want to do it, you will find the way. Yeah, my first trials to make these films, I was met with a lot of closed doors. And also, when my first film, Return to Aztlan, came out, nobody really understood it. Nobody seemed to be interested, and then I was able to put it in theaters, and it stayed there for about 4 months, to the surprise of everyone, and then since then it has become a classic of Mexican films. So I believe it's a question of doing things nobody else has done, and to use your resources, your inner resources, your intellectual, emotional, and cultural inner resources. I wonder if that answers the question. Well, we have 3 minutes left. I think if there are no more questions, I think we can wrap this up. Thank you very much for allowing me to express my ideas on this subject. I hope that those would be useful to you, because I know that Indonesia has a very, very rich and old culture, which, well, no, forms the basis. Many countries have done it. They have went into their own cultures and created their own national cinemas, which have had worldwide impact. So let's all share our cultural treasures. Thank you so much.
More questions. So is it okay? One more question, Professor.
What your opinion about today's medium? So many automation in image making. Is it a sign of the death of maestro? No, I don't believe so. You know, film is the only art that we know its origin. And it was originated as a technical innovation. You know, there wasn't like, I need to express myself in images and words, so I'm going to invent film. No, it was the other way around. Here's this machine that can freeze time. Finally, Nietzsche's Zarathustra's phrase of revenge against time became a reality, yeah? Well, we cannot go back in time and change things, but if we have film, we can do it, yeah? We can rewrite our own history, yeah? We can make a documentary of myself and tell a lot of things that didn't happen as if they really had happened, and don't tell the things that really happened, you know, like memory, you know? Memory lies a lot, yeah? So now we have this beautiful box that can freeze time. That's what we're going to do with it. So let's shoot films, no? Let's shoot happenings. Let's tell stories. And this became very complicated till the advent of sound. Now we have sound. What can we do with it? Okay, let's do all this and this and that. We start with mono sound and stereo, then Dolby sound, now Atmos sound. Now we have all these digital imagining possibilities. Wow, what can we do with them? I don't think it's a death. I think it's a rebirth, yeah? And also the first mute black and white films, our ancestors are still present. We still can do films in that way. So you have the table set for you. You can do a small, I don't know, breakfast, or you can do a banquet. It all depends on your imagination. The resources are there, yeah? Well, I hope that answered the question. So thank you very much to all. I hope it was fruitful. And I have to teach a class in a while, so that's why I'm cutting this short. Okay, well, enjoy your night. We're going to enjoy our day.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye.